Hi guys, Thogrey here for a new video, and this video will be a discussion video about the current meta. We will do a meta analysis, but also let's discuss about the end of 9.2, since next week there will be 9.2.5, and there could still be balance changes, but I don't think so, and there is like no real changes, so I think the meta will still be the same next week, but it depends if they are going to make changes. If they do make changes, I will of course make a video about it. So let's discuss about this meta, but I'm going to first of all thank you guys for the many subscriptions I got these last weeks. I'm quite overwhelmed with a lot of support from all kinds of places, from Reddit, the WoW forums, but also in-game, and also the people that are watching my videos. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, if you like PvP content, I would invite you to subscribe to the channel and also like the video if you like the video, and comment below what you think about WoW at this very moment, but also what do you want to see as content, and we can then discuss if it's possible to make. Yeah, so let's go for the meta analysis. And we are on Xunamate. Of course, this is not the only website that you can use to track games or to know the meta. But I'm going to use this website, since I'm always using this website to actually have a grip about the amount of games that are played for specific classes specs. So we will discuss first of all with 3v3, then we will discuss about 2v2, and lastly we will do a short brief discussion about RBG and the state of RBGs. I didn't do an RBG tier list video because I feel like the meta didn't really change there, but maybe 9.2.5 I will make a tier list video for just RBGs, and we will discuss briefly about each spec. So you see that since the beginning of season 3, um, priests has always been super prevalent in the meta. You just see with the amount of percentages that are displayed here. And since the beginning of the season 3, Holy Priest was always king and is always king. You see, as the healers, we are going to discuss firstly about healers. The meta is pretty simple and clear. You have Holy Priest being on top of their game. Then you have Holy Paladins, you have the Restoration Druids, since they are always popular because of their playstyle, and also the simplicity of 2v2 being able to have great impact in 2v2. Restoration Druid is still a great spec, although I think they need a few changes to be more active while winning the games. Except Cyclones, you don't really have damage in 3v3. Restoration Shaman still popular, I guess, for a healer that is actually not that powerful. I feel like being able to contribute with damage, but also with CC, makes Resto Shaman a bit more interesting to play, but their output healing is very low, so they might get changes for that, but I think it's the combination with the double legendary and the tier sets that isn't really helping Restoration Shaman to do output healing. That's why it actually is that low. But I think that if they change the 4 set, I don't think they will do, or they change the double legendary interactions, it might be better. But we will see with the changes. Discipline Priest, I've made a video a few days ago, 2 days ago actually. You can always check it out. This priest is probably the most fun healer for me to play, especially in 2s and in 3s. And I'll just recommend to watch the video if you want to learn about this priest. But I can say that the difficulty of Discipline Priest is that you have a lack of CC. You may have damage, you may have healing, your mana bar is on a timer, but your CC is really the lowest of the healers. Even Mistweaver have a better CC rotation. They have a paralyze, they can Ring of Peace to push people off the edges, but also they have an AoE stun, and they can even play without the Ring of Peace, and they can go for the sleep. But Discipline Priest has a fear and of course mind control, and the problem is with mind control it DRs on fear. So you have some difficulties there. While Holy Priest, they have fear, they have a stun, they have mind control. they have more possibilities. And Holy Paladin has also some CC, even though they need to be a bit closer. And Druid is also a specialist of CC, and Shamans has the hex that you can actually always spam if you have the PvP talent. But yeah, Discipline Priest, they have that problem. That's why it's so low. I think it's just a question about CC. And since we are in a meta where CC is really prevalent, you want to CC your targets. It makes it super hard to actually play around it. Let's talk about the ranged meta. I still think it is a melee meta season. Like, you have great specs in ranged or casters, but I think melees have a easier time to climb or to have a performance. They are also capped in the amount of comps that they can play as a ranged. Of course, destruction can work with a melee, but for example, a frost mage, it's a lot harder to make it work with a warrior or with a feral or whatever, you know. Of course, fire is still on top. I still think the population of fire is a bit lower than destruction because you have like a second good spec, which is frost. And some people are delving into arcane, although arcane isn't really popular because of the obvious reasons. But Shadow Priest is still a played class in spec, but they are really not that strong. I feel like the damage that you can do as a Shadow Priest is relevant, but also irrelevant. It's a lot of pad damage. You can compare it with Affliction Warlock, but also their CC protection isn't that impressive compared with an Affliction Warlock, for example. Also, we are in a meta where burst is super important and pad damage a bit less, and that's why Unholy DK is now good because they have burst. It's not the consistent damage that is actually killing you, it's actually the Abraham limb and the burst rotation, like in a hole that kinda kills you or your targets or your enemies, for example. While Shadow Priest doesn't really have that, they have some burst, but it's tied to specific CDs, and once those CDs are up, they can actually get kited, and also it's actually easy to kill a Psyfiend, for example. So Shadow Priest isn't really meta. Elemental Shaman is played more and more because of Venruki, of course, but also a lot of Twitch streamers. They are actually showcasing how Elemental is a great class and spec to play. I still think Elemental Shaman are kind of getting carried because of the other classes. I would say Elemental Shaman with a warrior is less impressive than Elemental Shaman with a Destruction Warlock. Of course, if they are training you, the Destruction Warlock will just chaos bot everyone. And if you are not trained as Elemental Shaman, you have a lot of tools to be annoying. Hex, Lasso, the Lava Burst build that Venruki has shown with Deep Elemental. Deep Elemental, I think, the legendary. You have a lot of good things. You have a lot of good abilities that you can press, and it feels good to play. I just think they are not that impressive as they might look. If you're playing Elemental Shaman, I think you would know what I'm talking about. Beastmaster is still popular, but I think it's more of a twos thing, and I think it's people don't really like to play jungle, and although jungle is very strong, it requires a lot of coordination. It's a bit like RMP, and you will see it at higher levels of MMR, but at low MMR, I think I really never saw a jungle cleave around 2k MMR, for example. So marksmanship still very strong, but they are limited to a lot of things like comps, and also the damage is really predictable, although it is possible to pull off. You can see it coming. If you play versus an MM, you know that you need to train that target or make their lives a living hell by CCing them, for example. Balanced druids, they are good. They have Convoke, although it's more for twos. In threes, you have too many pets that are running around getting star searched. Um, Very strong for specific specs, very specific comps, but I wouldn't really count on it. Affliction, you see the amount of games played in trees in the last week, 580. It's on the same level as Frost DK, and I'm an Affliction main. I was an Affliction main. I kind of stopped right now. Um, you just feel bad playing an affliction warlock. I know that's maybe frustrating to play against, but it is nowhere near what it was in season one, where you had the slow legendary that was tied to a corruption. That was actually a good golden time for warlocks. Although I didn't really like the play style, it was super annoying for melees to actually getting slowed permanently because it was not you were not able to liberate yourself. But now with the amount of melees, especially Fury Warriors, Necrolords, that can actually just banner and run on you, I mean, it's kind of difficult to be an Affliction Warlock. Also, it's not the meta to pad people and to play dampening. People just want to kill directly, be killed or kill, and often not when you're playing Affliction Warlock, you're going to get trained, and you don't have the burst that the other classes have. That's why it's so low. It's not impressive to play. And I think it is one of the first times I would say in season 3, start season 3, that affliction warlock actually is so low compared to a destruction warlock. Normally destruction warlock and affliction warlock, they are kind of fighting each other with the representation, but now it is clear that just destruction is a better spec, but also overall that affliction is one of the worst specs of the game. I still rate it high because a lot of people don't know how to play against an affliction warlock, but I would say a lot of healers cannot play with an affliction warlock because it's totally different than, let's say, a melee or even destruction warlock. You play actually the game to peel your affliction warlock, while for other instances, like if you're playing with a feral druid or a fury warrior, you can play a lot more aggressive, and yeah, that makes it very hard. Demonology has fallen apart because of a few nerfs, but I still think that it is a bit of a flavor of the month phenomena. I still think that damage is still good for demonology, but people just wanted to play the one shot. Now you can two shot or three shot people, but people don't want to play it because destruction has the easier access to one shots. So that's why the demonology is so low. Also, the gameplay is not that fun. It's also hard to pull off with the amount of actual CC in the game. Even the trinkets will really not help you that much. Also, you need to stand still a lot of times because you need to cost a lot to get your damage up. And often than not, if you want to do the big damage, you need to place with a succubus. And the problem with a succubus is it is super squishy. It dies in 1, 2, 3, and then you have no pet. And when you have no pet, like whenever you cast your second pet, and that pet gets killed, you're pretty much paper because the damage is transferred, and that's why demonology is not that good in trees, at least. In twos maybe a bit better, but arcane still arcane. People don't play arcane, don't really play arcane because frost and fire mage is so much better, but also arcane, the design choices that they have behind arcane is not interesting for the average player to play, I would say. Not everyone is Mid Jones or xaryu to be able to perform on arcane, for example. um, yeah, it's kind of hard. I wouldn't recommend playing arcane. But now let's talk about the melee-centric meta. It's a bit the same as twos, that's why twos will be very short, and threes in RBGs will also be very short. But Fury is a meta spec. You want to play with a Fury Warrior. If you are a melee, you want to do a melee cleave, you want a Fury Warrior in your comp. If you're playing a DK, you can play with a DH, but to be honest, you can play with a DK, with a Warrior and have maybe better success because Havoc has darkness, has blur, but Fury they have intervene, they have a stun if they play stun, they have a fear, they have a lot of tools that you want as a DK. So for me, TSG, I really rate it a lot higher than DH DK, for example. It is for a DH the best comp that you can place with a DK, but for a DK you want to play with a Fury or even with a caster, but I wouldn't really recommend it because Shadow is not that good at the moment. But if Shadow gets a buff, I think Unholy DK with a Shadow Priest is a very good comp. But they need to buff Shadow Priest to have that engaged, I would say. The idea, I would say. Subtlety is still very strong. I would say Shadowy Duel that availability to actually catch someone and kill him in just one duel because they have no trinkets or no CDs is really a big threat. Like, if the game is like 2 minutes or 3 minutes long, you know that you have no trinkets, you know you have no CDs. He has a kidney, he has their CDs up. You will get shadow dueled and probably die in a shadow duel if your healer is not reactive enough, or if they have no AoE healing. Like for example, restoration druid. What can he do except in tranquility? They can do nothing. They cannot help you. And that's the issue. For example, Discipline Priest is very good versus a sub rogue because they have Dome, and if they do Dome once they are shadow dueled, they are kind of protected, and you can have a 50% damage reduction. But not every healer has that. Even the Holy Priest cannot really save you. So on DKs and Feral. Feral is very strong. I just feel like it's not really my playstyle, but I get why people play Feral because they have huge burst. They can also play Convoke, they can play Necrolord. They have so much variety in the ways that they can play that I think that's why they are actually played a lot. But for me, it is not an S tier spec. It is probably A tier. And it deserves to play with a jungle cleave, I would say. So you need a hunter for that, but it's possible. You can make it work. Unholy DK, very strong. It has really been a wild ride for them in season 1, season 2. They were never at that amount of games played per week. But now that Frost DK has fallen apart and people just like to play DKs and they were like waiting for a big change, now DKs are a bit more played. Um, Retribution Shaman and Retribution Paladin and Enhancement Shaman, those two hybrids are popular because they are played with a Fury Warrior too. Turbo is a very good comp. Red Fury or Red Arms is also a very good comp, especially if Necrolord, your Retribution will just do a lot of damage. They can just one-shot someone. So those two specs, especially since they are very well associated with a Fury Warrior, they enjoy the same light as a Fury Warrior, I would say. Still, the representation is still high for those types of specs, especially for enhancement. Past seasons, Enhancement Shaman was really not played that much, but now it seems like Enhancement Shaman is in a good spot. I feel like it is because of Fury or because of Warrior in general, but we will see with the next patches if they will nerf Fury one day or not. Havoc Demon Hunter, it is the same as past season. They didn't really change it. They have still good comps, although I feel like people know now how to play versus DH. They just need to kite, just need. It's actually a bit difficult to play around it. But a Havoc Demon Hunter can climb very well, just depends about the comp that you are going to play. Windwalker, once and for all, is a good spec, but I think it's just easier to kill a Windwalker than a, let's say, Fury or a DK or a Paladin or an Enhanced Shaman. It is very, very squishy. So that's why it's maybe not that played. Um, and it's also difficult to, I would say difficult, nothing is really difficult, but it's difficult to play compared to other classes. That's why I think the representation is quite low, and also their association with Fire is very good, but Fire has a lot more comps. That's why maybe they see a lot less play. Survival Hunter, I would say it's very high for trees. Normally Survival Hunter is not played that much, but now you see that Survival Hunter has a lot more play, close to equal with marksmanship and beast mastery. I would say hunters are in a very good spot because of their feigned death legendary, and I feel like in Dragonflight when they have no feigned death legendary, they will just fall apart because a lot of people has become accustomed to the way to play defensively because of the legendary, but once the legendary is not here, I think that a lot of people will just drop out of hunters and stop playing hunters as a whole. Outlaw has a lot of representation. Like, imagine that an outlaw has more play than an affliction warlock. I would never have imagined that, but it is the state of play. Melees are very good and very interesting to play. while casters are very tedious to play. Um, Outlaw is, for me, becoming one of the best specs. Very underrated. I need to change my tier list, but God, Outlaw is very good. They can also work with a lot of comps, more than Assassination, for example, and that's why Assassination also dropped off because their burst is kinda easy to predict and stoppable once you know that he's coming, but still he can kill you in 100 and 0 in one sepsis, you know, in Vendetta sepsis. It all depends, and now there is a new spec with Fan of Knives, but a new build with Fan of Knives. I'm not a fan. It's very good though for damage, but I'm not really a fan because I liked assassination rogues to actually apply a lot of poisons to get more energy, and now you're using Fan of Knives because of the damage. So it's a playstyle change. Arms, they got nerfed. It's now easier to kill arms. It's easier for casters to kill arms. They have the damage. The damage is still very high. The burst is very high. But Fury Warrior with their 2-set and 4-set, they are insane. And then you have Frost Decay, the least played spec with Arcane and Demonology Warlock. Yeah. I'm playing Frost Decay at the moment. I'm probably going to make a guide about it. I like it. I feel like it's easy to counter you, but the damage is really high. So I feel like if they get a buff, it might just reverse the tendency with unholy DK. So we will need to see that. Let's discuss briefly about 2v2. 2v2 really it is the rogue and hunter show. Like god tier specs. Subtlety, Shadow Duel, you're dead. Outlaw, they will outlast you and out-CC you. Fury Warrior, they will just ham and butcher you. Look at the amount of games on Holy Priest. Like the difference, and Holy Paladin is just not played. It feels like a bug, but okay. I still see a lot more Holy Paladins than Disciplined Priests, so I don't know how it is like this. And especially I see more Holy Paladins than Mistweaver monks, so I don't know if it's really correct. But the amount of Holy Priests is really correct. I'm playing like all my games are versus Holy or Restoration Druids. So this is definitely correct. This is insane. I feel like Blizzard needs to do something to buff those classes, and also I would say also Restoration Druid, but whatever. At least those four class specs to make it equal, and then maybe the game would be a lot easier to digest. The amount of Frost DK games in twos, 26. I think I'm one of them. I'm thinking I'm one of them. That's not good. No. That's not good. But yeah, it's the Rogue Hunter show. Look at the amount of games on Rogue. You have 7K, 8K, 2.3K. Like you are around 17K games on Rogues. You have like a lot of survival, a lot of BM, a lot of MM. It's really the Hunter and Rogues show. You have also Feral Druids very good, Fury Warrior very good. I see a lot of DHs. I don't know how it's that low, but I see a lot of Havocs. I guess all those games are played versus me. But yeah, I see more and more unholy DKs though. Of course, the hybrids are not that played, like Retribution, Paladin, Enhancement, Shaman. They are just not that good in twos. They need to play with double DPS, and double DPS is not that popular because it's a lot easier to die. Fire Mage still very popular. Frost DK, Affliction Warlock, they are bottom of the bottom with Arcane. Arcane has more games than Frost. You need to understand that, man. Arcane has more games than Frost DK. That's insane. Demonology Warlock has more games than Affliction Warlocks. That's also insane, man. If that's correct. Shadow Priest finally has decent like other stats because that's more realistic. I saw Xuna made a few weeks ago, and you had Shadow like at second position, which is not realistic in twos. But yeah, I mean, if you see it in twos, like I said, rogues, hunters, you have Fury Warriors, DH Havoc, Feral Druids, Fire Mages with a rogue. You have Beast Mastery, Marksmanship, And then you have like the few classes that you can encounter, like for example destruction, elemental, and I would say balance druids and shadow priests. But that's the meta in twos. Twos is not really representative of the meta. I would say it's a slideshow because I think it is more predictable how a game goes in twos than in threes. In threes, you have more unpredictable damage, unpredictable CC, unpredictable situations, while in twos, it's very telegraphed, very, I would say, schematic, and also with puzzles. Like, you do this, I will do this, then I will stun you, you have no trinket, next go, you're dead, for example. While in threes, it's a bit different. Let's talk about RBGs. Of course, the best RBG healer for me is Disc Priest because they have the damage, they have the healing, they have everything that they need. They also have a lot of AoE damage reduction. They can play also with the push talent, which is very nice to push someone off the ledges. Disc Priest is very fun to play. I would recommend to play Disc Priest as in RBGs. Holy Priest is still good. I feel like you like a lot of AoE healing, that's why Holy Paladin is very good. Restoration Druid helps you to travel with the flag carrier, I would say. And mistweaver monks are probably underrated in RBGs, although it gets killed very fast once you have no CDs. And restoration shaman, they are really not that good because they don't have output healing. Output healing is king in RBGs. Of course, range classes still it will be balance druids, destruction, affliction because affliction with the pad damage is relevant in RBGs. You have marksmanship because they are quite popular because of the one shots, but they are not that much taken. And then you have the elemental shaman. They are also meta for me. And then you have the frost mages and the shadow priest, which is not really popular. Fire mage, you should never take a fire mage in your group. You should actually not take a mage in your group. I think mages are D tier in RBGs because you don't really have CC. Polymorphs are getting broken because of AoE, and your damage is very schematic. And of course, combust can kill someone, but you want to have consistent damage and consistent availability of your damage. I cannot speak anymore. Of course, in the melee section, you have rogues, which is super popular in RPGs. You always need a rogue. The meta will never change for that. It was always like this. Rogues are king. If you have a spot for a rogue, you need to fill that spot. There is no way that you are going to play without a rogue, except if you just want to make a game because of a daily, for example. Havoc, very popular because you have mobility, you can catch guardian druids. You don't see guardian druid here, but guardian druid is the only tank that you should play in an RBG. Of course, you can play with vengeance DH, but it's not that good. With a protection paladin, but it's not that good. You want a guardian druid. I hope they would change that in the future, but yeah, you need to play with a tank in RPG, so it is what it is. Retribution Paladin very strong because you have defensives, you have burst, you have the healing that you can also provide to the team. Overall, if you have a melee cleave, I would say in RPG, you want a Retribution, you want a Fury, and you want a Havoc. Of course, you have a spot for DKs. Frost DK is still very good, and Unholy DK is also very good, although it's more paddy since you have your Violent Plague, while Frost has a lot more AoE oomph, I would say. Um, you want to play with a sub rogue, but you can also play with an assassination rogue. Outlaw is not that popular. Enhancement is not that popular. Although I would make a place for enhancement if you play with a fury warrior, which is necrolord. Often than not, their damage is very insane. Feral druids are not that good because you don't have a spot for them, but you can make a spot. You can make a comp which is very good for retakes. You have a feral druid, you have a sub rogue, and then you have a hunter, for example. You can be all over the map and retake really easily. Windwalker, not that popular, and I think I've discussed everything. So let me know what you think about this video. And I would say, really, the meta, I like it. I just don't like the healing meta. I would say if they buff a few healers, the meta would change drastically for the better. While I think the few outliers, like for example Frost DK, Arcane, maybe Affliction Warlock, Demonology Warlock, they just need a bit of more love to their kit and how they play. I'm not asking for damage because damage is subjective and you can always do damage, but utility or ways to defend yourself is probably the number one thing that you need for those classes. For like Frost DK, they don't really have a specialization versus someone. You kinda are a victim of the meta. Like melees are just very strong and DKs are notoriously not good versus them. So this video has been long, my excuses, but I hope it was interesting for you. You can always watch it in the background, and yeah, now it's in the end of the video, but timestamps will be below. And of course, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you like those kind of content. I'm also going to cover the AWC, which I'm super excited to. And also like the video and comment below what you think about this video. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.